August 29, 1973, 150 miles off the coast of Cork, Ireland. The Atlantic Ocean is cold and dark and 2,000 feet deep. A Canadian cable-laying ship called the John Cabot rides the swells in rough weather. Below the ship, a bright yellow submersible is working on the ocean floor. Her name is Pisces III. She is the size of a small family car. Inside the cramped steel sphere, two men breathe air, recycled through chemical scrubbers. Roger Mallinson is a 35-year-old former Royal Navy submariner with steady hands. Roger Chapman is 28, an engineer who helped design the submersible he is trapped inside. They have spent the day burying a transatlantic telephone cable in the seabed. The work is complete, and the submersible begins its ascent toward the waiting ship. At 1,600 feet, something goes wrong. A buoyancy tank floods with seawater, and the submersible becomes heavier than the ocean around it. The ascent stops, the descent begins, and it begins fast. Pisces III drops through the water column like a stone falling through air. Mallinson grabs the controls and deploys the emergency ballast weights. The weights are designed to make the submersible positively buoyant in an emergency. They deploy correctly, but the flooding is too severe, and the descent continues. The submersible hits the ocean floor at 1,575 feet. The impact is violent enough to knock both men from their seats. The lights flicker and die. The interior of the sphere goes completely black. Mallinson's Chapman sit in absolute darkness at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The water temperature outside is 38 degrees Fahrenheit. The steel hull begins to cool toward the temperature of the water outside. Condensation forms on every surface and begins to drip onto the men's faces and shoulders. They have 72 hours of oxygen in the emergency supply. No one has ever been rescued from this depth. Not in the history of undersea exploration. The deepest successful submarine rescue ever attempted was at 600 feet. Pisces III is at 1,575 feet, almost 3 times deeper. On the surface, the crew of the John Cabot realizes the submersible has been lost. They radio a mayday to every vessel within range and to the naval authorities in England. The Royal Navy dispatches every available deep-sea asset with all possible speed. The United States Navy prepares a remote-controlled rescue vehicle called Kier AV-3. The Canadian Coast Guard scrambles aircraft to search the surface for any sign of the submersible. But the submersible is not on the surface. It is a quarter-mile below. 24 hours pass inside the sphere. The temperature has dropped below 50 degrees Fahrenheit inside the hull. Mallinson and Chapman sit in the dark conserving oxygen and body heat. They do not speak to avoid producing carbon dioxide. They write messages to each other on scraps of notepaper using a pencil. The messages are practical. Oxygen levels, carbon dioxide readings, battery status. They do not write goodbye notes. Neither man is ready to accept that outcome. The John Cabot uses its sonar to locate the submersible on the ocean floor. The sonar return is a tiny blip in 1,500 feet of black water. The ship positions itself directly above the wreck and holds station in the heavy seas. A second submersible, Pisces II, arrives at the scene and prepares to dive Pisces V. Another submersible is loaded onto a transport plane and flown from Scotland. The American Kier RV-3 is airlifted from California and flown across the Atlantic. 3 nations are converging on a single point in the ocean to save 2 men. Pisces II dives toward the stranded submersible with a rescue line attached. The rescue plan is brutally simple. The submersible must descend, attach a line to the hull, and pull it to the surface. The attachment must be made at 1,500 feet in total darkness by feel alone. Visibility on the ocean floor is measured in inches, not feet. Pisces descends through the darkness to the ocean floor. Its lights illuminate Pisces III, resting on the seabed in a cloud of disturbed sediment. The rescue submersible positions itself above the wreck and deploys its mechanical arm. The arm attaches a specially fabricated toggle bolt to a lifting point on the hull. The first attempt fails. The toggle will not seat properly in the lifting bracket. Pisces II must surface to recharge its batteries and try again. Mallinson and Chapman hear the rescue vehicle depart through the steel hull. They do not know if it will return. 50 hours have passed. 22 hours of oxygen remain. Pisces II makes a second dive. The toggle attaches but slips free during the lift. 48 hours of oxygen have been consumed. 24 remain. Pisces V arrives at the scene and joins the rescue effort. The two submersibles work in rotation, one diving while the other recharges. Attempt after attempt fails. The toggle bolt will not hold. Engineers on the surface fabricate a new attachment device out of spare pipe and steel cable. The device is lowered on a line, and Pisces V positions it over the lifting point. At 60 hours elapsed, the new attachment is secured. The lift begins, the cable tightens, and Pisces III rises off the ocean floor 1 inch at a time. The ascent must be gradual. Rapid pressure changes would rupture the hull. It takes 3 hours to raise the submersible through 1,500 feet of water. Inside the sphere, Mallinson and Chapman feel the motion of the ascent. They have been in the dark for 63 hours. They have not spoken in 2 days to conserve air. The carbon dioxide scrubbers are failing, and the air is growing thick and sour. They have 12 minutes of breathable oxygen remaining when the submersible breaks the surface. The rescue crew opens the hatch from the outside. Light floods into the sphere for the first time in 76 hours. Mallinson and Chapman are lifted out of the submersible into the gray Atlantic daylight. They are hypothermic and dehydrated, and their voices are hoarse from the carbon dioxide. But they are alive. They walk off the deck of the rescue ship under their own power. The rescue of Pisces III sets a record that will stand for decades. It is the deepest successful underwater rescue in human history at 1,575 feet. The record will not be broken until the rescue of the Russian submarine AS-28 in 2005. 3 decades separate the deepest rescue from the second deepest. The submersible itself is recovered and examined by engineers. The flooding is traced to a single failed O-ring seal in the buoyancy tank. A rubber gasket the size of a wedding ring had brought down an entire submersible. Both Mallinson and Chapman returned to work in the subsea engineering industry. Chapman designed deep-sea rescue systems so no one would be trapped as he was. Mallinson continued piloting submersibles and became one of the most experienced deep-sea operators in the world. Neither man ever forgot the darkness at 1,500 feet. Neither man ever forgot the sound of the rescue vehicle's mechanical arms scraping against the hull. Neither man forgot what 72 hours of silence feels like at the bottom of the sea. Pisces III was eventually decommissioned, and the bright yellow hull was placed in a maritime museum. School children climb inside the replica sphere and cannot believe how small it was. Most of them cannot believe 2 grown men survived 76 hours inside something that small. The truth is, the men themselves could barely believe it either. But they did survive because dozens of people from 3 different countries refused to stop trying. They did survive because an engineer in Scotland designed a new attachment device overnight. They survived because a pilot in California flew a rescue vehicle across an ocean. They survived because a sonar operator in the North Atlantic refused to leave his station. They did survive because, when the last toggle failed, someone on the surface said try again. Try again they did, for 76 hours, until the hatch opened and the light came in. Roger Mallinson died in 2021 at the age of 83. Roger Chapman died in 2020 at the age of 74. They spent the rest of their lives answering questions about the rescue. They never tired of telling the story or forgot what it felt like to be saved. On the Atlantic floor, the imprint of a submersible is still visible in the sediment. The mark will fade over time, but the record will not. 1,575 feet, 3/4 of a mile, deeper than anyone had ever gone and come back alive. They came back because no one on the surface was willing to stop trying. That is not technology. That is not engineering. That is not luck. The refusal to give up on two men in a yellow sphere at the bottom of the sea. And that refusal is worth remembering the next time something seems impossible.